Hey guys, my name is Naguura and today I'm going to be talking to you about the 9.1 class changes and how it's going to affect the Covenant choices, spec choices, Legendaries choices for all specs and all classes for DPS. This is going to be DPS only. So I gathered the information across all of the class discords. I talked to the different communities, theory crafters of each spec. Keep in mind some of the information that I have gathered was not final yet because there were some sims that weren't done yet. Domination sockets weren't included in the sims just yet. The Sylvanas daggers, weapons weren't included as well. So some of this information might change, so keep that in mind. But this is the information we have so far. I'm going to go through all classes, going to start with Druid, of course, the superior class. So, Druid Balance. Balance of all things our best and slot legendary has been nerfed, and therefore the new best legendary for all covenants except Venythr is going to be Pulsar. The new best covenant is going to be Venythr with the new covenant legendary Sinful Hysteria. You should be crafting that legendary on belt once you can. It will be unlocked on the 3rd week of the patch. You also need to recraft Pulsar on ring, but make sure you do this after the patch because they announced that basically if you craft a legendary after 9.1 that is in a slot that can have a socket in it, then it automatically will be crafted with a socket. So you don't have to worry about, buying Venythr gems beforehand or recrafting legendaries before the patch. Just make sure you craft them after the patch. If you didn't already do it like I did and wasted a lot of soul ash, it is what it is. Then for Feral, Night Fae is still the best covenant. Druid is still the best legendary for single target with an occasional use of Apex, Frenzy Band, and Circle. Possibly you have to recraft legendaries into non-domination slots for Druid, Apex, and Circle. Domination slots for leather users are chest, helm, shoulders, feet, and hand. So make sure you recraft those after the patch if you're looting the domination socket slots at one point in the raid. Then for Warlock, the best rating spec overall is going to be changing from Affliction to Destro. The best pure single target spec is going to be Demo. So Demo might be seen on some fights, but overall it should be Destro that is going to be seen the most. Night Fae is still the best covenant across all specs, but this is subject to change because it's a lot closer than it used to be. And for Legendary, the assumed best Legendary for Destro and raiding is going to be Cinders and Wilfreds. Cinders for single target and Wilfreds for AoE. Wilfreds can also be used for Demo, so it's going to be a decent Legendary. Make sure you recraft Wilfreds on ring, so you're not covering domination socket slots, but do this after the patch because then you will be crafting it with a socket slot in it. For rogues, final sims are not done yet, missing sims for Sylvanas, daggers, and domination sockets, but all specs seem to be very close to each other. The best rating spec should be Assassination, possibly Sub for some situations though, and for plus it's going to be Outlaw. All covenants seem really close to each other too, so you should be picking the covenant depending on which specs you want to play. So if you want to play Sin and Sub, then the best covenant would be Venythr. If you want to play Sin and Outlaw, the best covenant would be Necro. And if you want to play Sub and Outlaw, then the best covenant would be Kyrian. Then for warriors, the best overall spec for raiding is going to be Fury. For raiding, Fury should be going Venythr and craft Sinful Surge. Make sure you craft this on neck, but after the patch hits, to make sure there's a socket in it. Then for Mythic Plus, Fury should be Night Fae or Kyrian, and you should be crafting Signet, which should be recrafted on ring after 9.1. For Demon Hunters, Night Fae is still the best covenant, Nia for single target, and Karain for Mythic Plus / AoE. For legendary choices, they're gonna stay unchanged. Burning Wounds and DGB are still legendary choices, and Burning Wounds needs to be recrafted on Cloak to not cover domination socket slots. For Hunters, the best rating spec is going to be MM, at least for the ranged specs. Survival is also going to be really strong, but Survival is a melee spec, so there's fewer slots for melee. You have to compare it to other melee classes, not to range classes. There's a lot of other melee specs that take up slots that provide buffs, for example. Like you need a demon hunter to give you a buff, you need a monk, you need a warrior, and so on. So it's going to be much harder to fit a survival hunter into a raid than like an MM hunter because range just generally have more slots. So yeah, survival is good, but MM is going to be much more likely that you will see it in a raid. For covenants, Kyrian for marksmanship, Kyrian or Night Fae for BM when it comes to single target / raiding. For M plus / AoE, Night Fae will will be stronger. So overall for a BM, Night Fae should be stronger. Unless you only plan on raiding, then go Kyrian. And for survival, Kyrian is also going to be the best. So Kyrian is going to be a really strong covenant for hunters as a whole. Then Legendaries. For MM it stays unchanged. Serpent Stalker is trickery for single target. Should be recrafted on ring after 9.1. And Surging Shots for AoE. There's a possibility for the Kyrian Coven Legendary to be better overall for your raid damage, but at a great cost at the Hunter's DPS. It's going to cost you 5% DPS to equip this Legendary. It's on paper overall better, but it requires your groups, like the damage dealers in your groups, to use your cooldowns exactly when you use your Resonating Arrow, and it's just going to be, in practice, it's probably not actually going to be better. So yeah, but we'll see about that later on once we have more information about it. Then for BM, the Warlock, Stalkers, Piercing Fangs are still going to be the best legendary for raid. You should be recrafting it on Lax. And Soulforged Embers is going to be the best for M+. You should recraft it on ring after 9.1 hits. Then for survival, Nesingwary's Trapping Apparatus with Birds of Prey build. For a single target, you should recraft this one on the ring after 9.1. And Warlock Stalker's Confounding Strikes or Wildfire Cluster for more AoE heavy scenarios if you're playing the Wildfire Infusion build. Now, moving on to Paladin, the best covenant is still going to be Kyrian. For Legendaries, it's very likely that the new Kyrian Covenant Legendary will be best in slot for single target. Craft that Legendary on Waste once you can craft it. And Tempest of the Lightbringer is likely still the best for AoE, but I read something about another legendary maybe being better for 2 to 3 target situations. Divine Resonance. So Divine Resonance might be better for like 2 to 3 target situations. Then for Shaman, for Elemental, the covenant choice stays the same, Necrolord or Night Fae, but Kyrian might be more viable now for M+, in case you decide on like Kyrian for multi-specking purposes, but Necrolord or Night Fae is still overall going to be better. Legendaries stay the same as well, but you have to recraft them to not cover the Domination Socket slots. So WKR crafted on Cloak with haste and versatility. EOGS should be crafted on Gloves with haste and crit. SFD should be crafted on Ring with haste and crit, but this legendary is not a mandatory craft anymore in Season 2, and you should only craft this if you don't like using EOGS in Mythic Plus and you're not a Night Fae. Then for enhancement, looks like nothing is changing except that Kyrian becomes more viable. Covenant legendaries are all bad apparently, and you should be recrafting the legendaries that you already have into non-domination socket slot items after patch 9.1. For Mage, the best rating spec is going to be changing. It's going to be either a Cane or a Frost. We won't be able to tell which one is going to be the best covenant until we actually have numbers from practice. So once the raid actually has come out and we see the actual scenario, on paper, they're both really close. The theory crafters that I've been reading the opinions of, the Mage theory crafters that I've read the documents of, they're saying that it's more likely for a Cane to be better because there's a bunch of boss fights that just don't favor Frost. But this is, of course, just an opinion and it is subject to change. Now let's go into the covenants and the best legendaries. For Fire, the best covenant is Night Fae still, and the legendary is going to be Discipliner Command still. You should recraft this one on Ring though, if you haven't yet after 9.1. For Arcane, the best covenant is going to be Kyrian, and the best legendary is going to be Arcane Harmony. You should craft that on Gloves. And for Frost, the best covenant is going to be Venythr. The best legendary is going to be Slick Eyes for single target. You should craft that on Lax. For Cleave/Hybrid, the best legendary is going to be Freezing Winds. You should craft that on Gloves. And for full AoE, the best legendary is going to be Glacial Fragments, and you should craft that on Lax. So as a conclusion about mages, since you don't know exactly if Arcane or Frost will be better, if you're not willing to level up both Kyrian and Venythr to 40, which would be the most beneficial thing, right? If you have both Kyrian and Venythr in 40, then you can just switch to whichever covenant once it's figured out which spec is actually better. But if that's not something you can do or want to do, then Venythr would be the overall better covenant, because Venythr is not that bad for Arcane as Kyrian is for Frost in comparison, right? So if you pick Venythr, you can still play Arcane. It's just not going to be as good as with Kyrian. Or if you really believe in the Mage theory crafters' opinions that Arcane might actually just be better in the raid, and you really only care about the raid, specifically for like the last few bosses on Mythic, then Kyrian is probably going to be the choice. But I will link a document below. One of the Mage theory crafters has written that I thought was really, really in-depth and detailed, and it had so much information on there. So I'm going to link that below. You can check it out. and see for yourself if you're not sure. Then move on to monks. The best covenant is going to be Kyrian. Best legendary is going to be Invoker's Delight, and it needs to be recrafted on Cloak once 9.1 hits. For Shadow Priest, there are quite a few bugs for Shadow Priest on PTR, and therefore the sims aren't final yet. But Night Fae seems to be the best covenant choice, and the best legendary is going to be Shadow Flame Prism, but this one has to be recrafted on gloves with haste and mastery as the missives. For DK, the best spec for rating is going to stay unchanged, Unholy, but for Frost, there's going to be some niches maybe where Frost might be better. The best covenant for Unholy stays unchanged, it's going to be Necro, and for Frost, it's going to be Venythr. The legendaries also stay unchanged. For single target, it's going to be Deadliest Coil. It needs to be recrafted on Cloak though. For Mythic Plus and AoE, Frenzied Monstrosity is going to be the best. That also needs to be recrafted on Cloak. Alright, so that's like an overview about all specs. I hope this helped you out a little. I will link all of the class discords below where you can get much more information, detailed information about your spec specifically if you want to know more about it. So linking all of those class discords below, also linking the document for mages below. And yeah, keep in mind, of course, that all of this is still subject to change, and make sure you stay updated with the class discords if you want to know about your specific spec/class. And yeah, I really hope this helped you out in some way. If you have any questions, you can ask in the comments below. You can also come over to my stream at twitch.tv/Naguura and ask any questions there. Make sure you do subscribe to this channel if you want to have more videos like these, if you want to get notifications, ring the bell as well. Whenever there's a new video posted, there's going to be lots and lots of 9.1 videos and WoW videos and guides. So make sure you just, give it a thumbs up. That would be much, much appreciated. Thank you so much for hanging out and for watching. I hope you have an awesome day today, and I hope you enjoy 9.1. Let's hope it's going to be a great patch so we are not bored of WoW anymore, hopefully. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one. See you in the next video. Bye!